Welcome to Tulsa Community College Diversity Dialogue. I'm Rebecca Marks. My guest in the first segment is Dr. Francine Ringold. She is, and I quote, the feisty poet laureate of the state of Oklahoma. She is the author of prose, poetry, and plays. Her books, The Trouble with Voices and Still Dancing, received the Oklahoma Book Award in 1996 and 2005, respectively. Ringold serves as the editor-in-chief of the Nimrod International Journal of Prose and Poetry for more than 35 years, and each year organizes the prestigious Nimrod Hartman Awards, which draws participants from around the world. Fran, welcome to Diversity Dialogue. I had to give you that long introduction because you have done it all.
Thank you so much. You didn't mention my 4 children. You did
Well,
not mention my 4 grandchildren.
I started to talk, and of course, John, okay, my classmate, who, okay, I want to give a shout out to John. But tell me, Fran, when did you decide that you wanted to write?
You know, I don't think it was any conscious decision. It just sort of happened. You know, I think some people write because in fact, I know someone who writes because he wants to get published. I mean, he doesn't care what it is. You know, it's just sort of seeing your name in print. Most people write because they have to. They have no choice. And so the first book, actually, that I wrote, my uncle, who was my substitute father, was in the war, and I wrote a book to him about taking care of his little girl who was then 4. I also knit him a pair of Argyle socks.
I remember that, yes. No, tell me, how did you come about the poem, A Letter from Aunt Vinnie? That is what just
Well,
tremendous.
First of all, there's no Aunt Vinnie. You know, there's something in literature called the intentional fallacy, because you don't know what the author's intention, and the author doesn't know what his or her intention is after about the first 30 seconds. But I can tell you that I was going through a very depressed, I was going through a divorce. And so I looked at, actually, the inception of that poem, I remember now, is a painting by Monet. So you'll notice in the poem there is a bottle on the table, which is probably wine, which I called Perrier.
Okay.
And there's a woman in a very Victorian dress, which I've never worn but would love to, and she's sitting at the table writing, and it's very quiet and peaceful. And sometimes going through periods of stress, you really just want to be alone. And I think, so she's writing, in the poem, she's writing a letter to Aunt Vinnie. I don't have a clue where I got that name. I've never heard of it.
Well, when were you first published?
In, I think in 1978, or maybe it was before, no, it was a little before that, but it was in the early 70s. And I think it was a poem, it was something about Mrs. Prufrock.
Oh, wow.
And I was in a hotel room where I had been left on a business trip, thinking I was going away for a glorious vacation and leaving my children behind, which was very hard to do. And so I was Mrs. Prufrock. Don't ask me.
Oh, wow.
Don't ask me.
Well, you know, I remember you giving me a copy of the book, Every Other One, and your late husband, Dr. Manley Johnson, he was a poet extraordinaire in his own right.
Absolutely.
How did you all come about with that collection of
poems?
Well,
this is the book you're referring to.
Beautiful, yes.
And, well, actually, we wrote in different parts of the house. Our house is small, but as far from each other as we could possibly get.
Really?
But then, you know, we always came to each other for consultation. You know, what do you think of this? and he would always know when I didn't say too much, or, you know, he was, I think, more precise in his revisions of mine. And so it came about kind of naturally, because I would read a poem of his and there would be a line that would click for me, and then I would steal it. You know, I mean, T.S. Eliot said, never borrow, steal, and then make it your own. So that's what I would do. I would take a line or a phrase or an idea, and then that's pretty much what happened. I mean, when you live in the same home with another writer, although Joyce Carol Oates says that her husband never read anything she wrote, but I don't believe that. So anyway, that's pretty much how it happened. And then we just sort of decided, well, we were ready to do another book. Why not do it together? And then I didn't like the idea of just doing...
I love the cover. I'd like us to get a close-up of that cover. I love that. Where are you guys looking out?
Well, I'll tell you, it was the cleverness of the publisher of the book, because it's just like the book is a collaboration, so is the photograph.
Wow.
It's two different photographs. In this one, I think he was looking out over a small village in France, and I was looking out over the ocean in another one, and
wow,
she put it together.
Oh, wow, that is great. Now, tell me, you are the editor-in-chief for Nimrod International Journal of Prose and Poetry. How did that come about?
Oh, well, not gloriously. I mean, not in any sort of disciplined way.
Okay.
Dr. Winston Weathers, you know, when the magazine had been in existence for about 10 years, and I was like 12 years old and teaching as an adjunct while my 4 children were running around the floor at the University of Tulsa. And nobody, you know, the magazine had started, and I should have brought a copy. It was just a thin little 16-page jobby. And Dr. Weathers was the faculty advisor at the time, and he came to me and he said, how would you like to help me with this magazine? And I said, well, I would love to, but I don't know a thing about it. I've never worked on a magazine, and you know, just beginning everything. Yes. But I'd be glad to help. Whereupon he presented me with 2 tall filing cabinets stuffed with unread manuscripts that even then, when they were just, you know, the magazine was just that thin and was only 10 years old, we had received from all over the country. So that was my first job, and that's how it started.
How has it changed? You know, when we talk about Nimrod, I know the latest spinning wheel, Legends Telling the Truth.
Yeah.
And when I look at the Nimrods, it's been going on for 35?
No, 43 years.
43 years.
43 years. Oh, wow. and the prize, no, maybe 53 years.
53 years of publishing, and the prose and the poetry.
Yeah, and so the conference is also the big thing, and the awards competition where we give $6,000 in prizes.
Yes.
Bring the writers here, which if I can find it, one of the writers that we're bringing here was the featured writer in Poets and Writers this month. Whoa. Her name is Nikki Finney. She's an incredible poet. She's a bold writer, and she will be coming. Our judge is Linda Paston, who has a long history with the magazine. Actually, she published in 1968 and has 12 books and many awards.
Tremendous.
So she's, yeah. So that's, you know, that's all coming.
That's all coming. How many submissions do you actually receive?
Just for the prize, last year it was 1,353. But that doesn't count the what we call the over the transom that during the year. So it cumulatively it's about 3,000.
3,000.
Yes.
You are going. Oh wow.
And we have the best. We only have 1.5 paid people, and we have 30 editors unpaid. We have a board of 40 people, all volunteer, and they come from every college and university, and people who are not teaching at this time.
Yes.
And of course, Mary Cantrell is at the other campus,
That is tremendous.
Yeah.
That is great.